Hey guys, this is Denise from LumaHat.com. In today's video, I want to show you how to loom knit an 8x8 square. And you can accomplish this using any loom that has at least 23 pegs. I used this red Nifty Knitter, and as long as it has 23 pegs, it doesn't matter. You don't have to use this one. You can use the blue one, a long one. I've also used this loom, which is another brand, and like I said, as long as you have 23 pegs, you're okay. You're gonna need a crochet hook and your Nifty Knitter or any type brand of looming hook. You need your scissors and some kind of tool to measure with. You can use rulers or measuring tape, whatever will work for you. And it's a good idea. I found that these work out really well when you use worsted weight yarn. And I'm going to show you how to make this nice garter stitch, which is a knit and purl, and how to get all your edges to match in this nice chain looking pattern here. And it's pretty simple and easy to make. So put your supplies together and let's get started. So I want to show you how to make this really cool little tool. It's free and it works every time to help me get that 8x8 square. And the reason I created this little helper here is because even though 23 pegs always gives you the 8 inches, when it's time to figure out the length, it's a lot harder. If you use different materials, it's a different number of rows. It can be anywhere from 28 to 31. This is wool. You have to do a different number of rows as opposed to acrylic. So to keep from having to figure out every time, or to give you a huge chart of what number of rows you need, depending on the yarn that you're using or the stitch that you decided to use, like you could do a basket weave as opposed to this knit and purl. And to figure out when you get to 8 inches, this little fella here works great. And the way you make that is that you just take a piece of yarn and make a slip knot on your yarn, and you're going to put that anywhere except peg 23. So you can put it on 21 or the middle of the area, anywhere except those starting pegs, which would be your number 1 or your 23rd. You don't put it there, but anywhere else is fair game. And once you put your yarn there, you're going to get your measuring tool. In my case, I'm using a ruler. And because I always keep my working yarn up at the top because I don't push my yarn down. My yarn is going to be up here, so this is where I'm going to start measuring. So I put my yarn up at the top, and I put my ruler up at the top. I take my yarn and I bring it down, and I make sure I get to 8 inches. So you start off with a piece of yarn that's longer, and you put your measuring tool up and you come down and you make sure that you have 8 inches and you cut your yarn there. What this is going to do is that as you're working and your yarn is coming down, you're going to see that you can tell when it's reached the bottom. That means that you have 8 inches and that you don't have to continue knitting. In the meantime, you're not measuring or counting as you're working. You're basically just knitting, and you can easily tell when you've reached that length of 8 inches just by looking. Then you just take your ruler and you measure to make sure that your measurement was correct. It's that easy. So this is optional. You don't have to do this. Otherwise, only thing I can tell you is that they usually take between 28 and 31, I think was the longest. Someone told me that they loomed in order to get the 8 inches. Well, I hope that helps. Let's start with the project. Okay, so we grab 2 strands of our yarn, and you make a slip knot if you want. I don't always make a slip knot. Sometimes I just wrap my work around that anchor peg, and you put your, whether it's a knot or you wrap it, put it nice and tight, not too tight so you can get it off. Once you do 2 or 3 strands, you can release that yarn from that anchor peg. And we start to the right and try to make it so that it's tight enough so that you can work but not so loose that you end up with those loose loops at the end. So put some pressure, some stress on that yarn so that it's a bit tight, and try to bring it down a little because you're gonna come back and you're gonna need to put some yarn on top. And so I'm gonna get to my, I put my marker here on number 21, so I know this is 22 and 23, and that makes 23 pegs. And now I need to go towards the left, and I always knit towards the left and I purl towards the right. So this is my first row, and on your first row it's best to start off with a nice tight flat knit, okay? And if you wrap it a little, they call it a U-wrap. Either way, it's a flat knit stitch, whether you wrap it around completely or you leave it this way. I just find that I work better, especially if I need to demonstrate. I just work better by you doing that little U, and try to get it nice and tight. Again, because this is your first row, and you don't want a lot of loose loops at the bottom. So you're gonna have to work a little harder on this one because it's that first row. And push it down a little, come back, and you're going to continue to do this. Always after you do that, go ahead and push it over a little just to make it nice and tight. And like I said, it might be a little hard to work on. Once you get this first row done, there's an easier stitch than this flat stitch. In fact, you can do any version of the knit stitch. The E-wrap is the one I do. But on this first row, we're going to do this nice, tight, flat stitch. And then we're free. All right, keep going, and I'll meet you guys on the way back. Okay, so we are on our last knit. And we're going to go ahead and get that one done. And those ends are always a little tricky. It's okay, don't worry about them. They always look a little looser than the other ones. No biggie. Now, we've knitted every one of these pegs, and now we're ready to go on our way back. Okay, so remember, we're always knitting the first two, even when we purl. And when we're on our way towards the right, we're gonna start purling, right? But we never purl this. We always knit. And when we change directions, we ignore that first one. Same thing on this side. When you change directions, you're gonna ignore that first one. And so we knitted all the way up, reach this last one. We're ready to turn, but we don't do anything with this one. We start with the one right next to it. And so starting with this peg right next to it, we're gonna purl. And so the way you purl is that you put your knit now opposite, you're putting it on the bottom. You're gonna scoop it up, take your working yarn off the peg. That was your old loop. You got a brand new one, and that's the one that goes on the peg. And then just pull your work. Okay, that's how you purl. Again, take your hook, grab that yarn. Oh, it can be tricky sometimes. Okay, grab it, bring it up, take it off the peg, put the new one on. Old one off, new one on. And I do that little push back just again because I like my work to be nice and tight, and that tends to work out really well. Take it off, new one on. Okay, if this is not a good enough explanation for you, I do have a video specifically for knit and purl, and you're welcome to take a look at that one. Okay, so I'm going to continue to purl all the way to right here, and then this one I'm going to knit. When I turn around in the direction to go knit again, I'm going to ignore this one. Okay, so in the meantime, continue to purl, and I will meet you on the way back. Deal? All right, meet you on the way back. Okay, so we're back to that last, second to last, and we're getting ready to purl. And now here's the edge, and we're going to now knit that last one, right? Because remember, we are always knitting. That's what's going to give us that nice uniform edge, is that we're never doing anything different with this. We're going to always knit those two ends, okay? Now we're ready to go in a different direction. We're not going to mess with this one. We're leaving it alone. We start off with the one right next to it. So we're going to slip this peg and go to the next one. And now, like I said before, we're going to now just do a regular E-wrap, because we want this to be easy. For my square, we're going to be sending it to a charitable organization. So I want to make this as easy as possible, because I want to make a lot of squares. And so if I'm only making a square, then I can take forever on it. But in this case, I want to make a lot of them. And so I want the easiest way. And the flat knit is not that easy. The E-wrap is very easy. So I wrapped all of them, as you can see. And now I basically just go get the bottom two over the top and keep going. Okay, and once I reach this last one here, then I come back and I'm ready to purl. But when I go to purl, I skip this one and I start my purling on that second. Slip, start. Okay, and I'm going to keep going until I get to this edge right here, which will tell me that I have 8 inches, and I know that it's time to close. Okay, so just keep going until you feel that you have those 8 inches, whether you're counting or you're using this little yarn guide, I call it. Let's come back once we've had our 8 inches, and I'll show you how to finish your square. Okay, so I had another square that I had already started, and this one already measures the 8 inches, and I'm ready to close it. So we have these what seem like extra ones on the end because they're the ones that we don't work on when we repeat. And as you can see, you have that nice chain like I had explained before, and that's what happens when you do that. Okay, so now we're going to take those end one loops that are here like lonely, and we're going to go ahead and take those and take them off, and I just take them off with my finger like that and put them on the one that's right next to it, and do the same with the one on the other end. Just go ahead and put it on there, and then knit that off. Okay, and we're gonna do that here on this end. Done. Okay, so now we've gotten rid of those extra ones that were on the end, and now let me show you what I'm gonna do. Now I usually do this with my hand, with my fingers, I'm sorry, just because it's easier for me. But if you need to get a hook to get these loops off, then that's fine. You're going to do whatever works best for you. And we're going to not cut this working yarn. We're going to work with it. And basically what we're going to do is in, out with this yarn, because we're going to need it. And if you don't do this, you're going to end up with a string that's showing from end to end, and it's just not a pretty sight. So as you're working, you're going to come in and out and in and out with this working yarn. So let's start with the first one. In order to get those ends, like I said, that match these ends, so that you don't have a top that is shorter than the bottom. We start off with making sure that we get an extra loop on this end, and the way we do that is we take this one off and put it in your crochet hook, and instead of going to this next one, we're gonna go in between to the little extra part right there. Can you see that? And get some yarn and pull it through, and this is going to give us some extra, okay, and we need that. See that? Okay, and then we're going to bring our yarn forward like that and take the next loop off. And like I said, if you need to use your hook in order to do that, by all means go ahead and use your hook. I use my hand. Okay, and we bring it forward and we take the next one off. Okay, and we take that working yarn and take it back, and what it does is it works itself in, and you don't even notice it. It just looks like part of the work. You see that? You see it right there? And we keep going, and what you're going to do is you're going to keep doing that. Bring the yarn forward. We're going to keep doing that until we get to about the middle, and then you're going to see that it tightens up, and that you're going to have to get an extra stitch. Whenever you see that it's tightening up too much for you, well, again, yarn back. You see that it's tightening up too much for you and you need an extra stitch, then you're going to do exactly what I showed you before. You're going to go in between a peg and just go and get another stitch if it's too tight. Okay, in my case it feels fine, so I'm gonna wait to get to the middle and do that, get an extra stitch, right, and then I'll make sure to get another extra stitch on the ends. Okay, you see that? Okay, if necessary, here's how you get an extra stitch in between. Might as well show you. Okay, so I'm in between the two pegs. I went into one of the stitches, I get some yarn, I pull it out, and I have here two sets. I do like this, and now I have an extra stitch, and I bring my yarn forward. I take this one off the peg, go in. Okay, keep going, and I'll meet you on the other end. Okay? Okay, so we're on our last peg. I've finished all the other ones, and as I said before, we want to go ahead and make sure we get an extra loop here, an extra one, and we grab our yarn and go through and get that last one and put it through. And we've been asked to, move this forward, and we've been asked to leave 24 inches on that last yarn, so I did measure mine, and it's 24 inches, and that last one we just take it and feed it through. Okay, and then that finished that last one. So I want to show you this one, which is I've already had everything knitted through, and as you can see, we have that extra yarn, which is going to help us knit the other squares together to make the blanket. And it's a perfectly square loom knit piece, and it is 8 by 8. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and that you'll go ahead and give this project a try, and you're going to see that you have a lot of uses for it. If you don't want your square to be so thick, then don't use 2 strands of yarn, just use 1, and it will give you a more open and breezy type of square. And you can also try different stitches. I made one with a basket weave, and it came out really nice. And like I said, this have many uses. Dishcloth, anything. Gosh, there's so many things you can make with the square. So until the next project, you guys have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.